Nancy Pelosi had survived 37 years of ruthless Washington politics, but she was completely unprepared for the moment FBI Director Kash Patel used 8th-grade math to dismantle her $120 million financial legacy on live television. Visual fast cinematic zoom. Cutting to a stark black screen. Audio A. Single, deep, cinematic boom. We are a free market economy. They should be able to participate in that. That is what Nancy Pelosi said when a reporter asked her whether members of Congress should be banned from trading stocks while in office. She was worth $120 million when she said it. Her congressional salary was $223,000. 14 months later, FBI Director Kash Patel sat at a witness table in the Rayburn House office building and asked her one question about that quote on live television. She could not answer it, and that was only the beginning, because before the hearing was over, Kash Patel, the son of immigrants who fled a dictator, the former public defender who made $42,000 a year, defending accused major felons in Miami, was going to do something to Nancy Pelosi that no Republican had ever managed to do in 37 years. He was going to make her sit in silence while he did math. If you think $120 million on a $223,000 salary doesn't add up, smash that like button, because the FBI director is about to show his work. Nancy Pelosi did not need to be in Rayburn Room 2141 that morning. She was not a member of the House Judiciary Committee. She had not been a member since 2003. But when Ranking Member Jerry Nadler called her the night before and asked if she wanted to use a portion of the minority's questioning time to address FBI Director Kash Patel directly on camera, on C-SPAN, with every reporter in Washington watching, Nancy Pelosi said yes before Nadler finished the sentence. She had been waiting for this. Kash Patel had been FBI Director for 16 months. In those 16 months, he had fired 14 senior agents, reassigned 23 others, and launched what Democrats called politically motivated investigations into members of Congress. He had written a children's book in which Donald Trump was a heroic king named King Donald, and Patel himself was a wizard who helped the king defeat villains called the Deep State. He had been confirmed by one vote, 51 to 49, the narrowest FBI director confirmation in history. Nancy Pelosi believed Kash Patel was the most dangerous man in Washington. She believed he was dismantling the FBI from the inside. She believed he was Donald Trump's personal enforcer, wearing a federal badge. And she intended to say all of that to his face on C-SPAN in front of 40 million Americans. She walked into Rayburn 2141 at 9:51, flanked by Representatives Jamie Raskin and Eric Swalwell. She wore a cream-colored suit and the pearl necklace she always wore to hearings she intended to dominate. She sat in the second row behind the Democratic members of the committee, directly in the C-SPAN camera's sightline. At 10:03, Chairman Jim Jordan called the hearing to order. He read the title, FBI Oversight and Accountability, and recognized the witness. Kash Patel was already seated at the witness table. He had arrived at 9:20. He had brought nothing with him except a legal pad, a pen, and a single sheet of paper folded in half. He was sworn in. He gave a 3-minute opening statement about FBI operations, national security priorities, and personnel restructuring. It was dry. It was bureaucratic. It was exactly the kind of opening statement designed to lull everyone in the room into thinking this was going to be a routine oversight hearing. It was not going to be a routine oversight hearing. The chair now recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Nadler, for his time. Nadler leaned into his microphone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield my time to the gentlewoman from California, former Speaker Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi stood up from the second row, walked to the questioning desk on the minority side of the dais, and sat down. She did not adjust the microphone. She did not shuffle papers. She looked directly at Kash Patel the way a woman who has spent 37 years in Congress looks at someone she considers beneath the chair he is sitting in. Director Patel, thank you for being here, though I suspect you did not have a choice. She did not wait for a response. Let me tell the American people who is sitting at that witness table this morning. Kash Patel was confirmed as FBI Director by a margin of 1 vote. 1. The narrowest confirmation in the history of the Bureau. He has no significant law enforcement experience. He has never led a field office. He has never run a major criminal investigation. He has never managed an organization of more than a few dozen people, and now he oversees 35,000 employees. What he has done is write a children's book in which Donald Trump is depicted as a magical king, and Director Patel himself is depicted as a wizard who helps the king defeat his enemies. This is not satire. This is a real book. It is available on Amazon. I encourage every American watching to look it up, because the man who wrote it is currently in charge of the most powerful law enforcement agency on the planet. Director Patel, in 16 months, you have fired or reassigned dozens of senior career agents. You have launched investigations into members of Congress that even your own former colleagues at the Justice Department have called politically motivated. You have turned the FBI, the institution that took down global syndicates, that stopped major threat operations, that protects this nation, into a weapon for one man, a legally convicted individual, a man who was impeached twice by this body, a man I impeached with evidence, with witnesses, with the Constitution of the United States behind me. You are not the director of the FBI, Mr. Patel. You are Donald Trump's personal attorney with a badge and a children's book, and the American people deserve better. She sat back, crossed her arms. Eric Swalwell, 2 seats to her left. Director Patel, yes or no? Have you received any directive from the White House regarding investigations into sitting members of Congress? Jamie Raskin, from the 2nd row, Mr. Chairman. I want the record to reflect that the director's book, The Plot Against the King, literally depicts federal law enforcement as an arm of the presidency. That is the man running the FBI. The Democratic side of the room was unified. Pelosi had landed every punch. Swalwell had followed up. Raskin had piled on. In the gallery behind them, 3 Democratic staffers were already texting reporters. She destroyed him. Kash Patel sat at the witness table. He had not moved during any of it. His legal pad was untouched. His pen was capped. His face showed nothing. The face of a man who had spent years in courtrooms listening to prosecutors deliver their best closing arguments before standing up and tearing them apart on cross-examination. Because that's what public defenders do. They sit, they listen, they wait, and then they ask questions the other side hasn't prepared for. The witness may respond. Nancy Pelosi just called the FBI director Donald Trump's personal attorney with a badge and a children's book on live television. Swalwell backed her up. Raskin piled on. The entire Democratic side of the room thinks she won. She didn't, because Kash Patel is about to open his mouth for the first time. And he's not going to give a speech. He's going to ask questions the way a public defender asks questions. Short, simple, devastating. Kash Patel uncapped his pen. He did not stand. He did not raise his voice. He spoke the way he had spoken in courtrooms in Miami-Dade County for 3 years. The voice of a man who is about to ask a witness a series of questions that sound harmless until the last one closes like a trap. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Speaker, for that introduction. The book is actually a trilogy. The second one is called The Plot Against the King 2. My niece illustrated part of it. She was 9. It's very cute. But I want to ask you something, Madam Speaker. And I want to be clear. I'm not asking as a Republican. I'm not asking as a Trump appointee. I'm asking as a former public defender who made $42,000 a year representing people who couldn't afford a lawyer, sitting across from a woman worth $120 million, who has spent 37 years on a government salary. What is your current net worth? Director Patel, I am here to ask you questions, not the other way. Your financial disclosures are public, Madam Speaker. They list your net worth between $43 million and $220 million. Most estimates settle around $120 million. Is that in the right range? My husband is a successful businessman who has built. I didn't ask about your husband's career. I asked about a number. $120 million. Is that approximately correct? That is approximately what has been publicly reported. Thank you. And your congressional salary, the highest you've ever earned in government as Speaker of the House, was $223,000 per year, correct? That is the standard. Yes or no, Madam Speaker? $223,000? Yes. Thank you. So, $120 million in net worth, on a maximum government salary of $223,000 in 37 years of service. Madam Speaker, I was a public defender in Miami. I made $42,000 a year. I defended people accused of severe offenses, illicit smuggling, and financial crimes. I know what a government salary feels like. I know what it buys. It buys a one-bedroom apartment and a used Honda and a lot of student loan payments. It does not buy $120 million. Not in 37 years. Not in 137 years. The math does not work. Jordan, from the chair, Director Patel, would you like to continue your response? Yes, Mr. Chairman. If the Madam Speaker will permit me a few more questions. This is not a cross-examination, Director, Pelosi began. No, Madam Speaker, it is not. But you spent 5 minutes cross-examining me. I think the American people would appreciate equal time. Mr. Chairman, Jordan, the witness may continue. Patel unfolded the single sheet of paper he had brought with him. It was a printout from a publicly available financial tracking website, the same kind of site that any American with a phone could access in 30 seconds. Madam Speaker, in June of 2022, your husband Paul Pelosi purchased between $1 million and $5 million in Nvidia stock. I have a simple question. At the time of that purchase, were you Speaker of the House? Yes. At the time of that purchase was the CHIPS Act, a $52 billion semiconductor subsidy bill being debated in Congress. The CHIPS Act had broad bipartisan. Madam Speaker, was it being debated? Yes or no? Yes. Nvidia makes semiconductor chips. The CHIPS Act subsidizes semiconductor chip manufacturers. Would Nvidia benefit from the CHIPS Act? Many companies would benefit. Would Nvidia benefit? Yes or no? Yes. Your husband bought millions in Nvidia while you were Speaker, while the CHIPS Act was being debated, while Nvidia stood to benefit directly from that legislation. And when the public found out and demanded answers, your husband sold all 25,000 shares at a loss of $341,000 2 days before the House vote. He paused. Then, in November of 2023, your husband bought Nvidia again. This time, the stock went up. It went up a lot. By early 2024, the position was worth over $1 million in profit, and in January of 2025, days before President Trump took office, your husband bought another $250,000 to $500,000 in Nvidia shares. The timing was impeccable, as always. But Nvidia is not the only one. In September of 2024, your husband sold a significant position in Visa stock. Shortly after that sale, the Department of Justice announced a major antitrust lawsuit against Visa. The stock dropped. Your husband had already sold, President Trump said publicly, and this is a direct quote. She should be investigated. Your spokesperson's response was that you do not own any stocks and have no prior knowledge of any transactions. Madam Speaker, you don't own stocks. Your husband does. And your husband's trades happen to anticipate legislation you support and lawsuits your government files with a consistency that would make the best traders on Wall Street weep with envy. Senator Josh Hawley was so impressed by your family's trading record that he named a bill after you, the Pelosi Act, preventing elected leaders from owning securities and investments. He named it after you, Madam Speaker. That is your legacy in financial regulation. You are so associated with congressional stock trading that they put your name on the ban. And in 2024, according to publicly available tracking data, your family's portfolio outperformed the S&P 500 by nearly 200%. 200%. That means your family's stock picks beat every major hedge fund on Wall Street. Every single one. Madam Speaker, when a reporter asked you whether members of Congress should be banned from trading individual stocks, you said, and I have the quote right here, it's been printed on T-shirts and coffee mugs across America. You said, we are a free market economy. They should be able to participate in that. A free market economy where a congresswoman's husband buys a stock that her legislation directly benefits and beats every hedge fund in the country. Madam Speaker, that's not a free market. That is a rigged market, and everyone watching this hearing knows it. The room was different now. The Democratic staffers who had been texting reporters 5 minutes ago had stopped texting. Swalwell's face was tight. Raskin was writing on his legal pad. Writing fast. The way a lawyer writes when he is preparing an objection he hopes he will not need. In the gallery, Nancy Pelosi's chief of staff had set down her phone. She was staring at the witness table, at the man who was supposed to be on the defensive, the man who was supposed to be answering questions, not asking them, the man who had just done math on live television that every American watching could verify on their phone in under a minute. Kash Patel just cross-examined Nancy Pelosi about her husband's stock trades the way a trial lawyer cross-examines a hostile witness. Yes. Yes. Trap. Her husband bought millions in Nvidia while she was pushing the CHIPS Act. Her portfolio beat every hedge fund on Wall Street, and she called it a free market economy. Nancy Pelosi had not survived 37 years in Washington by folding under pressure. She had stared down Newt Gingrich. She had outmaneuvered George W. Bush. She had torn up Donald Trump's State of the Union speech on live television and smiled while doing it. She was not going to be cross-examined by a man she considered a glorified political appointee with a law degree and a children's book. She leaned forward. Director Patel, are you finished with your little performance? Because let me tell you what the American people actually see when they look at you. They see a man who was hired to run the FBI and who in 16 months has turned it into a political weapon. You have fired career agents who spent decades protecting this country. You have opened investigations into journalists. You have subpoenaed congressional records. You have done everything Donald Trump asked you to do, and you have done it with the enthusiasm of a man who knows his entire career depends on one person's approval. You want to talk about my husband's stocks? Fine. Every trade Paul Pelosi has ever made is disclosed publicly. Every single one. In compliance with the Stock Act. In compliance with House ethics rules. The FEC has never brought a single action against me or my husband. Not one. And you want to talk about net worth? Let me talk about yours. You founded the Kash Foundation while you were being vetted for FBI director. You sold books. You sold merchandise. You appeared on podcasts and charged speaking fees. You monetized your proximity to Donald Trump the way every person in his orbit monetizes it, by selling access and selling fear. So before you lecture a woman who has served this country for 37 years about the free market, director, maybe you should explain why a sitting FBI director is running a non-profit that raises money from the same political base that elected the man he reports to. I have been in this Congress longer than you have been alive. I passed the Affordable Care Act. I passed Dodd-Frank. I impeached a president twice with evidence, with the Constitution. And I did it while people like you called me every name in the book and threatened my family and broke into my home and critically injured my husband with a heavy weapon. Do not lecture me about integrity, Director Patel. You do not have the standing. The Democratic side of the room erupted. Standing ovation from the minority members. Swalwell on his feet. Raskin nodding. Nadler clapping slowly from the ranking chair. In the gallery, 3 reporters were already typing "Pelosi eviscerates Patel" into their phones. For 45 seconds, it felt like Nancy Pelosi had won. Kash Patel waited. He let the applause peak. He let it ring. He let the cameras capture the standing ovation and the smiling faces and the fist pumps from the Democratic staffers. Then the applause faded, and the room was quiet, and Patel spoke. Madam Speaker, thank you. That was impressive, truly. 37 years of experience and you can still deliver a 5-minute speech that makes half the room stand up. I mean that. But you made a mistake. A small one. You might not have noticed it. The people watching at home might not have noticed it either. But I noticed it, because I'm a lawyer. And lawyers notice things. You said every trade Paul Pelosi has ever made is disclosed publicly. That is true. You said they comply with the Stock Act. That is true. You said the FEC has never brought an action against you. That is also true. But you didn't say the trades were clean. You said they were disclosed. Those are 2 very different things, Madam Speaker. An illicit earner who files a tax return on the funds he took has also disclosed his income. Disclosure is not innocence. It is paperwork. And I want to address one more thing. You said I was hired by Donald Trump. That's true. He nominated me. He is the president. That is how FBI directors are appointed. But you left out one detail. The first person in the United States government who hired me, who looked at my resume and my law degree and my record as a public defender and said, I want this man working for the American people, was Barack Obama. 2014, the Obama Department of Justice, National Security Division. I was hired to prosecute extremists. Global threat networks. I put people in prison who wanted to harm Americans. Under Obama, not Trump. Obama. Before that, I was a public defender in Miami-Dade County. I represented people who could not afford a lawyer, people the system had already decided were guilty. I stood between them and the government. I made $42,000 a year doing it. That is my career. Madam Speaker, public defender, national security prosecutor under Obama, national security official, FBI director. Your career is 37 years in Congress and $120 million on a government salary. You said I don't have the standing to question your integrity. Maybe not. But I have the standing to do math. And the math says $120 million does not come from $223,000 a year. Not in 37 years, not in 100 years, not ever. So let me ask one more time. Where did the money come from? The room was quiet now in a way it had not been quiet all morning. Not the charged silence of a crowd waiting to cheer. The flat, suffocating silence of a room full of people who have just heard a question they cannot unhear. Patel did not wait for an answer. He knew she would not give one. He had been a trial lawyer long enough to know that the most powerful moment in a cross-examination is not the answer. It is the pause where the answer should be. He moved on, and what he moved to was worse. Madam Speaker, you mentioned January 6th. You said you impeached President Trump over it twice. You said you rewrite. You did. And I want to talk about that day. But not about the president, about you. In June of 2024, the House Administration Subcommittee obtained documentary footage filmed by your daughter, Alexandra Pelosi, on January 6, 2021. The footage was produced to the subcommittee by HBO. It had been in the possession of the January 6th Select Committee for over 2 years. The committee did not release it publicly. They did not archive it when the Congress ended. When Republicans took the majority, the footage was not handed over. The subcommittee had to go directly to HBO to obtain it. In that footage, which is now publicly available on the House Administration Committee's website, you were being evacuated from the Capitol, and you said on camera to the people around you, "I take responsibility for not having," and then you were cut off. You were taking responsibility, Madam Speaker, on camera, for the security failures at the Capitol on January 6th. Because, as Speaker of the House, you had authority over the Capitol Police. The security of the building was in part your responsibility, and you admitted it on camera to your own daughter. And then after the cameras were off, after the dust settled, after the country moved on, you authorized $20 million in taxpayer funds for the January 6th Select Committee. That committee spent 2 years building a case that placed the blame for that day entirely on Donald Trump. That committee did not release the footage of you taking responsibility. That committee did not include your admission in their final report. You took responsibility on camera, Madam Speaker. Then you spent $20 million taxpayer dollars making sure the public didn't see the tape. That footage is taken completely out of context. The footage is on the House Administration Committee website. Any American can watch it right now. They can pause it, rewind it, listen to your exact words, and decide for themselves what you meant. Pelosi said, "I take responsibility" on January 6th, on camera, filmed by her own daughter. The J6 committee had the tape for 2 years and never released it. $20 million taxpayer dollars to build a narrative, and they hid the footage that contradicted it. Patel shifted. His voice changed. Faster now, clipped. The rhythm of a lawyer entering the final phase of a cross-examination where every sentence is a nail and every pause is a hammer. Madam Speaker, August 2020. San Francisco indoor hair salons closed by city health order. You were filmed inside a salon getting your hair done. No mask. The salon owner, Erica Kios, released the security camera footage. You were indoors in a city where indoor salons were illegal under orders you supported. When confronted, you said, and I am quoting, "It was a setup." You blamed the salon owner. Erica Kios received severe threats. She eventually closed her business and left San Francisco. May 2022. Your husband, Paul Pelosi, was arrested in Napa County, California, for an impaired driving violation after crashing his Porsche into another vehicle at an intersection. His toxicology reports were over the legal limit. He was convicted. He was sentenced to 5 days in jail and a $6,800 fine. He was driving a Porsche, Madam Speaker, in wine country, where you and your husband own a vineyard valued at between $5 and $25 million. He set down his pen. He folded his hands. Madam Speaker, in the last 30 minutes, you have called me unqualified. You have called me a puppet. You have called me a wizard. You have said, I don't have the standing to question your integrity. I grew up in Garden City, New York. My parents came to this country from India after my father's family was expelled from Uganda by a dictator named Idi Amin. They came with nothing. My father got a job as a financial officer at an aviation company. My mother raised me and my siblings. I went to public school. I went to the University of Richmond on financial aid. I became a lawyer. I spent 3 years, making $42,000 a year, defending accused major felons and illicit smugglers who could not afford to hire someone better than me. Then Barack Obama's Department of Justice hired me to prosecute global threat networks. That is my story. Your story is 37 years in Congress, a $120 million net worth, a husband who trades stocks that your legislation benefits, a salon visit during a lockdown you supported, an impaired incident in a Porsche in wine country, and $20 million spent hiding a tape of you saying, "I take responsibility on the worst day in the history of this building." You ask the American people who they should trust with their government. He looked directly into the C-SPAN camera. I let them decide. Pelosi stood up from the questioning desk. She had one more round. Her 37 years in Congress had taught her that the last word matters more than every word that came before it. She had watched men try to destroy her career 100 times. Gingrich tried. Boehner tried. Trump tried harder than all of them combined. None of them had succeeded. She was still here, still standing, still wearing the pearl necklace. She was going to take the last word the way she always took the last word, by reminding everyone in the room who she was and what she had survived. Director Patel, you are very good at this. I'll give you that. You are a talented lawyer. You ask good questions. You have a gift for making simple things sound criminal and legal things sound corrupt. But here is what you will never understand. I have devoted my life to this country. I have fought for working families. I stood on the floor of this House and held this caucus together through 2 impeachments, a pandemic, and an insurrection. I did it while receiving severe threats every single day. I did it while a man broke into my home and critically assaulted my husband with a heavy weapon. I did it while people like you called me a traitor and a criminal and a corrupt politician who should be in prison. I am 86 years old, Director. I have given this country everything I have, and I will not be judged by a man who writes children's books about wizards and kings. History will judge both of us, and I am confident, very confident, about where I will stand. She stood up. She walked back to the second row. Raskin reached over and squeezed her arm. Swalwell nodded. Nadler from the dais looked at her with an expression that was either admiration or sympathy. It was hard to tell which. Kash Patel waited until she was seated. Then he leaned into his microphone one final time. Madam Speaker, you said history will judge us both. I agree. I think it will. But I want to leave the American people with one piece of math. Just one. Because I am a lawyer, and lawyers like to close with one number the jury can take home. You entered Congress in 1987, 37 years ago. Your salary has never exceeded $223,000 per year. If you had saved every single dollar of your salary, every dollar for 37 years, without spending a cent on food, housing, taxes, or anything else, your total lifetime earnings from Congress would be approximately $8.2 million. Your reported net worth is $120 million. 120 minus 8.2 is $111.8 million. That did not come from your congressional salary. Where did it come from? I'm not asking rhetorically. Madam Speaker, I am the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Asking where money comes from is my job. Nancy Pelosi sat in the second row. She did not respond. She did not lean forward. She did not whisper to Raskin. She sat perfectly still, the way a person sits when they have heard a question they have been avoiding for 37 years and have just realized it was asked on live television in front of 40 million Americans. Jordan gavelled, "The time has expired. This hearing is adjourned. I am the director of the FBI. Asking where money comes from is my job." That is how Kash Patel ended it. And Nancy Pelosi, the woman who has never been at a loss for words in 37 years of Congress, sat in silence. Outside Rayburn, 2141, in the marble corridor that connects the hearing rooms to the elevators, a political reporter caught Nancy Pelosi 3 steps past the door. "Madam Speaker, do you have a response to Director Patel's question about the 111 million? Pelosi did not stop walking. She looked straight ahead. Her heels clicked on the marble floor at a pace that was neither fast nor slow. The pace of a woman who has been walking away from reporters for 37 years and knows exactly how to make it look like she is not running. "That man is a disgrace to the badge he wears," she said. She did not answer the question about the money. 2 floors above, in the Judiciary Committee's Majority Staff office, Jim Jordan stood at the window, looking down at the courtyard. His chief of staff walked in. "Fox wants you for the 500 Hannity." "What's the angle?" "The math. The 8.2 million versus 120 million. They want you to walk through it on a whiteboard." Jordan smiled. Not a big smile. The small one. The Ohio one. The one that came from growing up in Champaign County and wrestling in high school and learning that the quietest person in the room usually wins. "Tell Hannity I'll be there. And tell him to put the math on a graphic. Big numbers, red background. 223,000 times 37 equals 8.2 million. Net worth 120 million. Gap 111.8 million. That's the graphic. That's the whole segment. He doesn't need me, he just needs the math." His chief of staff paused at the door. Chairman Nadler's office already put out a statement calling the hearing a disgraceful political stunt orchestrated by a compromised FBI director. "Good," Jordan said. "That means they don't have a number. When they attack the process, it means they can attack the facts. Call it the Jordan Rule. Write it down." He stayed at the window. He had chaired a lot of hearings. He had seen a lot of witnesses. He had never seen what he had just seen. A witness turn the table completely, take the microphone away from the most powerful woman in Democratic politics, and do 8th-grade math on live television that no amount of staff memos or press releases or CNN appearances could undo, because the math was real and you cannot spin arithmetic. Somewhere in the FBI director's motorcade heading east on Independence Avenue, Kash Patel sat in the back seat with his phone on his knee. He had not checked it since the hearing started. It was vibrating continuously. A stream of texts and calls that he knew would include congratulations from people who supported him and warnings from people who did not. He did not check the phone. He called his mother. "Ma, did you watch?" "I watched the whole thing, Kash. Every minute. Your father would have been so proud. Did I go too far?" His mother paused. Meena Patel had raised her son in Garden City, New York, after her husband brought the family from India to Canada to America, with nothing but a degree and a willingness to start over. She had watched her son become a public defender, a national security prosecutor, an FBI director. She had watched him get called a puppet and a hack and a traitor and a disgrace by people who had never fled a dictator or defended an accused individual for $42,000 a year. Kash, your father left everything behind in Uganda. Everything. He came to this country because he believed that in America the truth matters. You asked a question today. A true question. The numbers are real. If you had not asked it, nobody would have. She's going to come after me, Ma. Hard. Let her. You're an FBI director. She's a congresswoman with a stock portfolio. You know who wins that fight." He hung up. The motorcade turned onto Pennsylvania Avenue. The Capitol dome was behind him, white against the gray sky. He thought about the number $111.8 million and about a courtroom in Miami where he had once defended a man accused of taking $900 from a gas station, and how the judge had sentenced that man to 3 years, and how Kash Patel had stood next to him while the sentence was read. Because that is what public defenders do. They stand next to people when nobody else will. $111.8 million. And nobody had ever asked where it came from until today. Somewhere in a town car heading to Reagan National Airport, Nancy Pelosi called her chief of staff. Draft a statement, 4 sentences, call the hearing a politically motivated spectacle, say, "My financial disclosures are in full compliance with federal law." Do not address the math. Do not mention the number. Do not say 120 million or 8.2 million or 111 million. Do not give them a number. Numbers live forever. Statements die in 24 hours. Her chief of staff asked, "What about the January 6th footage? The 'I take responsibility' clip?" Pelosi was quiet for 3 seconds. Say the footage was taken out of context. Same line as last year. They were going to ask for more. They always ask for more. Give them 4 sentences and nothing else. She hung up. She looked out the window at the Jefferson Memorial, white and glowing in the afternoon light. She had been in Washington for 37 years. She had survived Gingrich. She had survived Bush. She had survived Trump twice. She had survived an attack on her home that had put her husband in the hospital with severe injuries. She had survived every Republican who had ever tried to end her career, and there had been hundreds of them, and she remembered every single one of their names. She would survive Kash Patel. She was certain of that. But the number $111.8 million was going to follow her. She knew it the way she knew everything in politics. Not from data or polling, but from instinct. From 37 years of watching things stick and watching things slide. Scandals slide. Accusations slide. Numbers stick. Numbers are clean. Numbers are simple. Numbers fit on a bumper sticker and a t-shirt and a Fox News chyron and a tweet. And this number, $223,000. Salary times 37 years equals $8.2 million, net worth $120 million, gap $111.8 million, was the kind of math a child could do on a napkin. That was the problem. The American people don't need a lawyer to explain it. They don't need a hearing. They don't need a committee report. They just need a calculator. And every American has a calculator in their pocket. Within 48 hours, the clip of Patel's final question, "I am the director of the FBI. Asking where money comes from is my job," had been viewed 93 million times across all platforms. It was the most viewed congressional testimony clip since the Watergate hearings. Late-night hosts played it 3 nights in a row. Saturday Night Live's Cold Open featured an actress playing Pelosi staring at a giant calculator while an actor playing Patel read numbers off a legal pad. The Pelosi Act, the bill introduced by Senator Josh Hawley to ban congressional stock trading named after her, gained 11 new co-sponsors within a week. 3 of them were Democrats. One of them issued a statement that read, "The American people deserve to know that their representatives are not trading on information they receive in the course of their official duties. I support this legislation, and I am not afraid to say so." Pelosi's office released the 4-sentence statement her chief of staff had drafted. It called the hearing a politically motivated spectacle, orchestrated by a compromised FBI director. It noted that all of the Pelosi's financial transactions were fully disclosed in compliance with federal law. It did not mention the number 120 million. It did not mention the number 8.2 million. It did not mention the number 111.8 million. The statement was reported on by every major outlet in Washington. It was forgotten within 72 hours. The number was not forgotten. Numbers never are. Paul Pelosi's next financial disclosure, filed 6 weeks after the hearing, showed that he had divested from 7 individual stock positions and moved the proceeds into index funds and treasury bonds. Pelosi's spokesperson said the changes were part of a routine portfolio rebalancing and were unrelated to any congressional proceedings. The spokesperson did not explain why the rebalancing happened to occur 6 weeks after the most watched stock trading hearing in American history. Neither did Paul Pelosi. Neither did the broker. Neither did anyone in the Pelosi orbit. Because in Washington, the most powerful answer to an uncomfortable question is silence. And the Pelosis had mastered the art of silence on financial matters the way other families master the art of conversation. Some questions answer themselves. If you made it this far, thank you. Every fact in this video is on the public record, Congressional Financial Disclosures at clerk.house.gov. Paul Pelosi's Nvidia trades, FEC records, and House financial filings. The free market economy, quote, multiple news outlets on video. The Pelosi Act, Senate bill introduced by Josh Hawley, available on congress.gov. The January 6th I Take Responsibility footage, House Administration Subcommittee website, obtained from HBO. The salon footage, widely broadcast August 2020. The impaired driving incident, Napa County Court records. Kash Patel's career as a public defender, FBI Director biography, on FBI.gov. His appointment under Obama, DOJ records 2014. All of it. 5 minutes. A phone. Any American. Comment the number $120 million below, because that number on a government salary is the only question that matters. Share this video right now. Send it to one person who still thinks January 6th was investigated fairly. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Next week, another hearing, another truth. God bless every public defender in America making $42,000 a year, standing next to people nobody else will stand next to. God bless every taxpayer who has ever looked at a congressional financial disclosure and thought, that doesn't add up. And God bless Kash Patel's father, who fled a dictator with nothing and raised a son who grew up to ask the most powerful woman in Congress the one question she could not answer. The hearing is adjourned. As the dust settles on this historic clash, one must ask, when the silence of our leaders speaks louder than their words, are we witnessing the preservation of a free market or the ultimate cost of unchecked power?